Hi and welcome to the first episode of the Qulture Qanvas podcast. I'm Asim Burney. I'm joined with my co-founders and co-hosts, Sania and Riaz. Hi, Sania.
Hey, Asim.
Hi. So we thought we'd do a market research podcast. I don't think there's a lot of them out there that are fun and interesting. So I thought, let's try to do one. I don't know if this is a good idea, though. I think we've been debating it, if this will just kill our career or not.
Well, you've certainly been inspiration to get this going. So
yeah, I mean, this is funny because I've been podcasting for like 15 years approximately, and I've always had this idea to do a podcast about market research, but I could never find like a good hook or to make it interesting until I found you guys. So you're the inspiration for this. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened.
Nice. So we've got to weave in some Bollywood, I'm sure, as well.
I think maybe we need to wean people in like episode 3, 4. We'll start putting in some Bollywood references in there into stuff.
well, I'm still learning about the Bollywood from you guys.
So, I mean, let's get started. Like, why are we even doing this? Sania, why are we doing this?
Well, I've always believed in the power of research and data, and I try on my social media. I'll always put stuff out, and my friends or people are quite interested, but I think no one really knows what research is, market research is. It's not always necessarily got the best name. So hopefully we can make it accessible, and there are so many like entrepreneurs out there or like influencers that could really incorporate, I think, research. So hopefully we can arm people with some tools to be able to do it as well, cost effectively.
What about you?
Yeah, I think, I see a lot of podcasts out there, and it's something I thought was really cool, and I've always wanted to do one. Just needed the confidence and encouragement to do it, and hence you guys have, been great in that sense. I don't shut up, in a personal scene, so I'm sure it lends itself quite well, and we've got great things to say. We've got a lot of experience, and yeah, hopefully this plays out.
I think I was talking to somebody and I wanted to give them an idea about what we actually do. And I thought, can I find a TikTok video or like a Twitter thread that I can share with them? And there was literally nothing out there that I could really like find that was fun and digestible.
Yeah.
And that's just such a shame, right? I feel a podcast is a great medium because it can raise awareness, like first of all about the industry, about the things that we're talking about, the things that we find fascinating. And the other thing also is being online and being a market researcher. You're such a generalist, right? You need to be aware and understanding of everything out there. It can be about, the penetration rate of YouTube in certain countries. It can be about which people are wearing diapers and stuff like that. It can go everywhere.
Yeah.
And then what you just mentioned, Sania, is that I just think people like the idea of following the journey of a startup. And that's what we are. We're a startup, right? We're starting this company that we kind of collective that we started together. And it's only been like, 6-7 months now?
Yeah.
So I think people would like to follow how we can, maybe make this a success, right?
Yeah, hopefully. I'm a bit of just very passionate about the industry. I think you guys are better than me in terms of like the business side of it. Sometimes I get a little bit overwhelmed about those elements. So it's nice actually to go on to this journey together and learn from you guys, and the stuff that I find maybe scary. I think it balances it out with having like 3 of us.
Yeah, we've definitely got a good balance between us 3. We all bring something a little bit different.
Yeah. But let's get into it a little bit too. Like, and this was my main question, and this is where I was thinking, like, will this get us into trouble? Is market research boring? Let's try to tackle this question, because this is an image problem that we seem to be having. I don't agree. I find market research fascinating, but I feel like when I'm talking to people, they just start snoozing off. Like, what is he even talking about?
No, I agree. I think to date, people still don't really know what I do. And I make it harder for them because I don't like saying market research. I've always had that stereotype of, okay, a clipboard, anyone can ask questions, but it's actually not the case. So I always say consumer and social research, which literally nobody knows what I'm talking about. So I made it worse. But I do think because we feel people have stereotypes about the industry, we almost lean into the science and the intensity, which doesn't make it very accessible or fun. But it is fun because people are putting out polls on their Insta story, and frankly that's all research as well. So I think trying to bridge that gap between the science, the intellectual side, but also making it applicable and something that everyone's excited about, which I think hopefully we can achieve.
I think it's also just the idea of we're researchers in a white lab coat behind a mirror looking in, but we're kind of never part of the conversation. And I don't know why that is, that image has kind of like stayed, or that we're bothering people in the street,
I think that's the one. And it's like when I explain what market research is, or people ask me what I do, there's generally a blank face.
Yeah.
And I think the assumption is like, stopping someone in the street outside the tube station when they're in a rush, right? And that's the kind of the stereotype that generally plays out. But there's so much vibrancy in our industry. No two projects are the same. And I think when you meet someone from our industry, that's when you realize how fun it is. There's been times where I bumped into someone at the airport and, you just start talking, you're like, what industry you work in? They say market research. And it's like, wow, you don't generally tend to meet people just off the cuff like that, right? So, it's definitely a cool industry, not boring for me.
But is it an image problem that we have, or is it that we fear, there's this idea of fear of bias, right? That's pervasive through everything that we do. We don't want to bias the data, we don't want to bias the question, we don't want to bias the participant. So in a way, if we're always avoiding bias, we almost become neutral, right?
Yeah.
So is that neutrality making us maybe hide?
I think so. I think because you can never really be like, that's that whole thing of you can't say something has caused something. You can be like, it's a correlation. And I think a lot of researchers, clients will often challenge us to be like, well, what do we do now with these insights?
Yeah.
I think we're having to get better at that because they've got so much data at their fingertips. They need data storytellers or strategists, essentially. So I think we're getting better at making those links and with a bit more gusto and confidence, being a bit more confident about what we're doing rather than sort of sitting on the fence with a lot of the insight.
Yeah. What do you think?
But going back to your point, it's like, do we have a habit of maybe pigeonholing ourselves, right? There's a few examples I can think where I've spoken to lots of like clients and there's just a lot of assumption of what we do. And we just need to showcase like what we do a lot more and work with people and collaborate with people a lot more. So I think it's maybe a confidence thing in the industry, which is surprising because there's so much information at hand for us. So we just need to kind of be a bit more vocal about what we do.
Yeah.
On that point, the bias, so I think there are a lot of assumptions from people that anyone can write research questions and it's simple, you just ask something, but it's actually not that simple, especially when it comes to diverse audiences. Like I was saying the other day that even the way I dress for focus groups, anything can bias a situation and I might get totally different results if I'm dressed a certain way or another way. And I think we focus a lot on inclusive research, and I think the science behind what you do and the way you ask questions is even more important. And I think we need to get that across to people. If you ask questions in not the best way or not the most intentional way, actually you can get totally the wrong answers.
Give me some examples though.
Oh God, I had a project recently that I was like, I had to go around the focus groups the day after and I was panicked. I was like, I can't do this. I'm going to get like eaten alive. This is really, could be very offensive. So I had to just subtly be like, hey, how about we maybe ask something slightly differently, or, this part of Islam is very different to that element. So they were very receptive, but it was quite touch and go because the questions were written very, very with the best of intention, but just without that cultural knowledge, it could have gone very wrong.
I remember you wrote something also where you are conscious of wearing your chain out or in. And I found that such a fascinating insight because I'd never thought of it that way, that it goes to that level. But it does, right? You have to think about that as a moderator, as somebody who's leading the project.
Definitely. And mine, it's funny because mine is, if you know, it's like one of those, if you know, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of people think it's like Vivienne Westwood. And I was like, no, it's Islamic jewelry. But it's nice because it can cross over. So I think those that can read it or see it, they'll be like, oh, they might get that cue and feel more comfortable around me. And others actually may not feel anyway. So, but there is stuff that they're just these signals. I think that's what we do. We understand human behavior and how people are going to respond. And there's a lot, I think, of thought that goes behind that.
Riaz, you were mentioning about assumptions that clients have already about
Yeah.
you? What kind of assumptions did you have? Like, what are the most common assumptions that you think you come across?
Probably they've got a prerequisite of like a methodology already in their head, and they don't really want to look beyond that. Obviously, from a sort of fieldwork sample perspective, a lot of this is designed in advance, and I understand that. But then it's challenging then to then go against the grain when you feel that it's not right or appropriate for that specific project. So I find that a lot, and maybe also from a research perspective, that's obviously your guys, Sania especially. Again, they've already got moderators in there, and sometimes for me, I feel like I have value to add beyond just that sample because I've experienced so much. So, I think clients just need to kind of be a bit more receptive to that.
I think a lot of times the challenge for market research is also where are you within the chain of decision makers, right? Like you have the client on top and then they go to an agency, that goes to a fieldwork provider, so there's so many different levels. So a lot of times you wonder, like, where can I push back? Where can I, especially when we're dealing with the diversity issues. And I think we've all had that when you see a questionnaire and you're like, okay, this is not how you should be asking that question, but then it needs to be approved 7 levels up, right?
Yeah.
And somewhere in those levels, somebody just doesn't want to have that conversation, right? Or isn't skilled or, knowledgeable to have that conversation.
Well, I'm fine. And actually, that's a good point. And I'm really pleasantly surprised because I run the industry training on inclusive research. And what's really nice is people are open to being like, actually, we don't know. Whereas for mainstream questionnaires, we've had like version 50 of a questionnaire and everyone's still going back and forth. But I think with inclusive research, they trust me maybe more with those judgments and being like, actually, okay, what do you think? Which is nice. I feel like people lean on that expertise, whereas with other stuff, maybe they come with more of their own concrete ideas. So certainly that's one positive I'm seeing in this space.
And that's the great thing with our dynamic, right? We all bring that skill set, and that really helps us sort of build that project.
Yeah, for sure. I also had this idea about there's this terrible person on the internet who's really, really famous. I don't want to mention any names. I think we won't be mentioning too many names. We'll try to confidentiality. That's another thing, which is very important in market research. So let's keep to that. But there's this idea about, facts don't care about feelings, right? And I just thought that's such a fascinating idea because market research is between facts and feelings, or getting the feelings out of the facts, or making facts out of the feelings.
Oh, I love that.
So yeah, there was more to that question than I'd initially prepared. But what do you kind of think about that of us as a position between being a conduit for facts or emotions and,
I love it. I think we need to take that as a tagline. No, because you get a lot of misconceptions about research, which is like, don't ask people what they think. They're going to tell you, that Henry Ford article, they'll want a faster horse rather than a car. Not article, but that quote. But I think what I've been seeing is with the rise of big data, a lot of the work I do being music research, you're seeing the data. So sometimes they're like, oh, actually, we don't need to do a survey, or we'll do a survey that's slightly different, but we can see people's streaming patterns. But wait, why are they listening to this? Or what's happening here? And that beauty of the two, so the quantitative survey data side, coming together with the feelings, the more qualitative side of things has I think started to happen more and more now, because we've got so many facts that we need to actually validate and understand better. And maybe on social media, we're actually seeing more of the day-to-day feelings, and actually, like you said, we need to put numbers to some of that. So
I think us on the fieldwork side, there's no space for feelings that much, right? Except our own personal feelings. But what do you feel about that idea about facts versus feelings and how that fits into market research?
Yeah, it's it can be a tension, right? But I think understanding what works for the project is key. And they can be very much complementary as well, right? Again, going back to the point of like, having a strict methodology, I think in the industry as well, I think they are competing. And that's a little bit of a problem. Like you'll have your quant specialists and your qual specialists, but it needs to be a lot more rounded in the approach, because it provides a lot more, potentially meaningful insights, right? So yeah, I think there's that challenge internally as well. But there's a place for both, definitely. And they both bring, incredible insights.
I think it's also fading away slightly, right? That idea of quant, qual being separate from each other. Now it feels to be, it's not even new. It's been for a few years that it's kind of flowing in and out from each other.
And I tend to find that, there was always that sort of rigid, we do the quant first, we must get the sample. Then from that we can do the qual. But actually, no, it can work the other way,
Yeah. What about some of the challenges we're seeing now? And I think this is going to be a whole episode separate from where we really want to dig into these. But there's a few that I found, again, from this idea of how can I share about the industry I work with, is that it doesn't seem to be attracting young, let's say young blood, in the industry. And why is that? Why is that when, like you mentioned, like, literally, you go to Carnaby Street and you will see everybody just asking questions on TikTok. Where did you buy that shoe? Which music are you listening to? Whatever, right? And that's market research, right? Be it a quick poll, like how big were BuzzFeed polls a couple of years ago? Like literally, are you a cat or are you a dog or are you a giraffe? Everybody was doing them. But still, that seems to be still removed from market research when, in a way, it is market research.
Why is it always Carnaby Street?
Because I literally just went to buy some.
No, but I say all these, what you're saying is always Carnaby Street.
It is.
I guess that's the hotspot.
But TikTok is...
I dare not go anymore, man. I'm just going to get interviewed or something like that. But yeah. Why is it? Why do you think that is, that we're not attracting young blood?
I think especially when it comes to diverse groups. I've been in this industry like over 10 years now. I haven't seen that much of a shift. I think the industry knows that there's a problem in terms of attracting diverse talent. I do think there are a few things. Sadly, it's not always the best paid at the start, and therefore I think people don't. There's that opportunity cost. Some people don't have the ability to take the risk to do something like this if it's not going to get them financial security from the start. So that is changing. But as you go up and up, there are lots of different opportunities. So I think that's one thing. Then I think there is absolutely an issue around awareness and maybe that the industry as a whole just faces, which hopefully we can, start to change. Again, I see my friends showing a lot of interest in research, and that's why I think this will be great to kind of actually explain what we do. And now that we've sort of built, I think, a bit of a reputation, by the grace of God, within the industry, to try to maybe use our platforms to not recruit necessarily, but get the word out about the industry.
What do you think?
I've noticed that a lot of people, Sania's an exception maybe, but a lot of people don't really study research, and they tend to have fallen into the industry. And that's obviously a big problem. There needs to be a promotion there, but we need more accessible entry points. So, whether it be, more mentorship, more in placements, collaborative projects with the education system. Those are things that will highlight, the industry a lot. And I think for millennials and Gen X, Gen Z, they really value diversity within the workplace. So really they need to see the teams, but also leadership have that diversity for them to feel, comfortable in the industry. And that's something we really need to push more.
When I first started in research, I remember my first company was very small. Then my second company, there was one girl who became a very good friend of mine she's Mauritian, but I would just follow her around the office. She's in a totally different industry. And then I was like, one day I was like, oh, she's going to the bathroom, let me go and talk to her. This doesn't look strange. But we latched onto each other, became really good friends. And but I remember interviewing in those early days and being like, there's no one here that looks like me. I don't feel comfortable. And I've had that over and over. And then thankfully, when it got to a position where in my last job, I was head of the team, I was like, that's good. I've gotten to a place, and hopefully then people will see that and feel comfortable there. But sadly, I do still think sometimes that does happen. So hopefully we can change, or like we said, show different people that are in the industry that might not be in your company, but are still there and present and could be role models.
And give a shout out to Core. They're doing good things,
Yeah.
Being vocal about this.
Definitely.
I think also it's the diversity. I mean, diversity, we're going to be talking about this a lot, so I don't want to get into it now too much. But there's also this, we do have the advantage of being in London, right? Where there's just more diversity just generally. So even if you are in a company that's less diverse, it'll tend to be a little bit diverse just because you're in London, right? But step out of it, you both, all three of us have had meetings where we need to go out to smaller towns, let's say, and it's scary out there.
It's hard. I've had some clients who are very, very intentional about wanting to do inclusive research better and attract diverse talent. But like you're saying, actually that diverse talent is not in that geography as such. So it's an even harder thing for them, even though they really are trying. I guess one way around that is working with diverse teams and suppliers, because if you're going to wait for the whole talent pool to become diverse, it's going to be decades.
Yeah.
So I think that's where specialists, I often say, bring in specialists like agencies, us or others, or individuals that can really help bolster that. I think that seems to be sort of helping make companies more diverse, or their work more.
Yeah. I think also when we're talking about diversity, a lot of times it becomes the diversity of race or color. Yeah. But with that is also diversity of approach, the way they think, the way we kind of think about problems. And I think that is what's needed. And I think that mindset sometimes needs to be shifted. Because a lot of times you go outside of London, or you have a conversation about diversity, and you realize that, we need to take it back 7 steps, to really start and explain where we're at.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I'm done talking about this in a way, right? But yeah, so diversity is a issue trying to attract, what about creativity? Do you think there's space for creativity in market research? Is that something? Because that's something that young kids need, younger people need. They need to be able to express themselves too, right?
Definitely. One of the best people I've had work for me, she was fresh out of, I think, school even, but so good with just, I don't know, Gen Z, not to stereotype, but they come with this can-do attitude. And she picked up research so well, had all of these cool ideas. And I definitely think young people who are great on social media would be amazing in research. And there is training, obviously, that goes behind, being a moderator or being engaging. But I think there's a huge opportunity to get more people who are good on socials, like doing interviews, doing vox pops. I think we can be more creative because all the social media platforms are basically integrating research tools. And I think people are starting to get better with quick polls and other stuff. So I think absolutely. And we are starting to become a bit more creative, which is nice.
What about on the fieldwork side of things? Are we able to add any level of creativity there, you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess if I look at it in terms of the way we recruit people, definitely thinking outside of the box. So there's a very, not everyone, but there's a very rigid way of kind of doing recruitment through panels, and that doesn't always work, especially when we talk about diversity in certain audiences. They're not going to be on general panels, right? So, if you want to speak to a first generation Pakistani lady, she's not going to be registered on a panel, right? So it's about, looking at communities, your contacts, and trying to work out, like I said, thinking outside the box. So you've got to be kind of creative in your recruitment approach as well.
Also, we get forced into adapting, right? As we need to. Now the whole conversation is happening about AI. And I don't think the conversation is done yet, but there's definitely new insights that we have to incorporate in certain ways. A couple of years ago, it was about mobile, and we had to kind of adapt those things. But we're still getting the grid surveys, the dreaded grid surveys. It's like one question after the other.
Yeah.
And we've been having those discussions about questionnaire designs since I joined, which is now getting close to 2 decades now. So I don't know. I feel there is space, but I think a lot needs to be still done on all fronts, like on the diversity fronts, on attracting new audiences, and just kind of creating a bit more awareness, I feel.
Definitely. I know when Typeform came, the survey platform, which was really cool and fun to play with. But then, like we said, and we have to give, respect to the science behind the industry. Because actually, if you change a survey platform, if you change the way your questions are ordered, that could have bias. It could introduce a lot of bias. So we should innovate, but absolutely we shouldn't overthrow absolutely everything that the industry has done before. It's just kind of finding those points. Asim, I think you'll probably have better ideas on this than me because you work very much in the tech side of things. But yeah, I think it's kind of adopting the right things at the right time.
Yeah. I think we need to be able to have those discussions with the clients though, right? Like even if they don't accept it. And I see this happen a lot because I've been running my own business for 10, 12 years now. And a lot of times you have this idea that you discuss with the clients, this is how it should be done. They'll take it to their client. They won't agree. But then when it fails, they'll be like, okay, Asim, you were right.
Yeah.
We should have done it this way. So there is this kind of like, you need to be able to push and not just accept the way things are, but it's always finding that right balance, right? And I think that's where the tricky part is, I feel.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think when you look at AI as well and how quickly it's advancing, sometimes you have the mentality of if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? But I see it, how much it can enrich research and the insight, especially if you're dealing with like a lot of data. AI can really help as long as it's not replacing what's inherently the most important thing is the respondent input. But then also I'm hearing things of AI being used in negative ways where like respondents are just using AI to fill out the answers, and it's a simple yes and no question and they've just got a dossier, right?
Oh God, I didn't know.
Yeah, people are doing a lot of that. So but I guess it comes down to the same thing where people pretend to like biscuits when they don't eat biscuits. I guess, it's always going to happen, right? So
cheating the system.
Cheating the system, definitely.
I was actually just I was writing something in ChatGPT and my daughter came over. She's like 11 or 12 now. She's 12. I know how old she is. But she was asking me like, how does this work, Papa? And I was like explaining to her and I was like, oh, it's like a robot. It'll give you answers and things like that. But it's just like young people get so excited with new ideas, right? Everything is like, and we have this like
in a few years, she's going to know 10 times you.
100. That's what I hope.
It's just incredible how much they absorb.
Yeah. Sania, did you have
No, I think we have to. There's a lot of talk in industries, music and others, about AI adoption. I feel like we're maybe not speaking about it enough in research. It can plug a lot of gaps around analysis skills or other stuff. I feel like a lot of people are probably using it and just not flagging that yet. But like you said, it shouldn't replace human behavior or like human skills, because there's still an art to questionnaire design. So it might give you a few ideas, but you'll still need to nuance it. So I don't think it'll ever replace. But yeah, if we're not quick to adapt to it, it could mean that clients are like, well, why do we need to pay for someone to design the survey? We can do it ourselves, with AI. So we have to think about how best to integrate.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I think that's it for this episode. I think we had a good little intro episode. So let's keep it here. And I think we're kind of trying to figure out how we're going to be doing this. But if you have comments, if you have other challenges that you want to talk about, leave it in the comment section. We can discuss it on a next future episode. And if you have any questions, you want to reach out to us at hello@qultureqanvas.com. And that's it. I'm Asim, Sania.
Riaz.
And this is our first episode.